firefighting helicopters collide midair while battling Greece wildfires. Two Bell firefighting helicopters collided midair while battling wildfires in Greece near Athens. Dramatic footage captured the crash as firefighters continue battling devastating blazes across the country. Now explore the truth, the mystery, and every detail of this story on our AI podcast.
When you picture a summer vacation in Europe, you probably have a very specific color palette in your mind.
Oh, definitely. The bright white stucco buildings, that perfect blue sky.
Exactly, the crystal clear turquoise water of the Mediterranean. But if you look at the raw footage pouring out of Greece right now, that palette is just completely gone.
Yeah, it's striking.
Instead, the sky is this charcoal black. The air is incredibly thick with this ash-gray smoke. And, well, cutting through all of it is this aggressive, volatile orange.
It's honestly terrifying to look at.
It really is. So welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we have this massive stack of breaking reports and on-the-ground accounts, and our mission is to cut through the noise and extract the core insights for you.
Right, because there's a lot of information flying around right now.
There is, and the focal point today is a single, frankly shocking incident that just happened in the Psatha region, which is just west of Athens.
Yeah, the Midair helicopter collision.
Exactly. And we're going to unpack how this specific incident serves as this terrifying microcosm of a continent-wide extreme weather crisis. Because, we don't just want to gawk at a disaster.
No, not at all. The goal is to synthesize why this is happening. What does this reveal about our changing global weather patterns? And what does it say about the extreme risks our first responders are facing right now?
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the chaos in the skies over Psatha, because that really precipitated the rest of these reports.
It's the focal point of the crisis.
It is. We have two Bell firefighting helicopters. These are heavy-duty machines conducting water-dropping operations over a wildfire. They both originated from the Elesina military air base, and each is carrying two crew members.
Highly trained military crews, we should point out.
Yes, exactly. And right there in the air, in broad daylight, they collide. The video footage is just harrowing. You see one helicopter sort of drifting into the other, and then
there's this massive midair explosion.
Yeah, a fireball plunging to the earth, followed by just incredibly thick smoke. In the immediate aftermath, one crew was confirmed safe. And that, of course, triggered this massive search and rescue operation.
Right. They deployed boats, other helicopters, medical teams, all searching for the second crew.
And I'm just trying to visualize this for the listener. I mean, flying a helicopter while dropping water is already precision work.
It requires immense skill under normal circumstances.
Right. But doing it in an unpredictable wildfire zone, well, it feels like trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster.
That's a really good analogy, and this raises an important question, right? How do conditions become so extreme that highly trained military crews could collide in broad daylight?
Yeah, how does that even happen?
Well, aerial firefighting is inherently one of the world's most hazardous emergency operations. You're dealing with immense aerodynamic forces, and when you add a massive, fast-moving wildfire, you're not flying in normal weather anymore.
Because the fire creates its own weather, right?
Exactly. It creates a microclimate. The superheated air from the flames rises rapidly, and that creates a massive vacuum at ground level, which pulls in cooler air at terrifying speeds.
Wow.
Yeah. It results in severe thermal drafts, these really violent, unpredictable updrafts and downdrafts.
So the prelude is flying this heavy machinery into like an invisible, chaotic elevator that's jerking up and down.
Basically, yes. And remember, they are carrying massive payloads of water. So as the aircraft gets battered by these thermal drafts, the weight distribution of the water is physically shifting.
Oh, I didn't even think about the water moving around inside. That sounds impossible to manage.
It pushes the mechanical limits of the aircraft and the human limits of the pilot's reaction times. You have zero visibility from the smoke and violent turbulence. That's how one helicopter ends up sliding laterally into the other.
It's just staggering. But, to understand why the air was so chaotic, we actually have to look at what was happening on the ground beneath them.
Right, the meteorological nightmare on the surface.
Exactly, because we usually think of the fire as the primary enemy, right? Like, you fight the flames. But reading through these reports, it seems like the wind is the actual antagonist here.
It absolutely is. The ground war is completely dictated by the wind.
Yeah, like this deployment near Porto Germano on the Gulf of Corinth. They have nearly 500 Greek firefighters deployed there.
500 personnel is a massive deployment.
It is. And they are stretched to the absolute breaking point. They've had to bring in international emergency teams from France and Romania just to hold their positions.
which tells you how overwhelming the environment is.
And we have this incredible report from Jorgos Doulas. He's a doctor and a firefighter. He says they're dealing with wind gusts exceeding 73 kilometers per hour. That's about 45 miles per hour.
And that's not just a steady breeze, that's sustained aggressive force.
Right. And he notes that the wind is constantly shifting direction. So the flames aren't just moving forward, they're moving everywhere at once.
This is where sheer unpredictability takes over. When wind speeds hit 73 kilometers per hour and constantly change direction, all of your traditional firefighting tactics just go out the window.
Like trying to build fire lines.
Exactly. Usually, crews strip away vegetation to create a perimeter so the fire runs out of fuel. But with winds this strong, you get this phenomenon called ember spotting.
Ember spotting, so the wind just throws the fire.
Yes, the wind acts as a transport mechanism. It picks up burning debris and hurls it hundreds of yards over the fire line, starting completely new fires behind the crews.
Wow, so you can't even flank the fire because the wind just turns your flank into a new front line.
Exactly, and the physical force of that wind is staggering. Connect the ground conditions to that aerial disaster we just talked about.
Oh, man. Well, there's this one detail from the fire department deputy spokesman, Yannis Artopios. He said the winds were so strong that firefighters were physically struggling just to push open the doors of their emergency vehicles.
Just think about that for a second.
I mean, these are heavy-duty fire trucks. And you have a fully grown firefighter full of adrenaline who cannot physically push a door open against the wind.
Right. So if a column of air has enough localized density and velocity to pin a steel-reinforced truck door shut against a human pushing it.
Yeah.
Imagine what that same invisible force is doing to a helicopter hovering at 200 feet.
It's basically batting it out of the sky.
Precisely. The technology and training are being entirely negated by raw atmospheric force.
And when the fire is moving that erratically and with that much force, it inevitably threatens communities. And here's where it gets really interesting, structurally speaking, because of who is being affected.
The civilian toll is heartbreaking.
It is. The reports show over 100 homes destroyed already. The flames even threatened a military firing range at one point.
Which adds the risk of unexploded ordnance to the mix. It's a nightmare for the responders.
But the part that is just surreal, almost cinematic, is these mass sea evacuations. Last week, over 200 residents from Agios Vasileios had to be rescued by sea. And then in the Viosha region, roughly 500 people got stranded near a village.
And they had to be pulled out by Coast Guard rescue boats as smoke choked the coastline.
Right. But wait, the reports say authorities warned these people to move inland earlier. So how do 500 people end up trapped on a beach needing a volunteer armada to save them?
What's fascinating here is the demographic of those 500 people. The reports highlight that this stranded group was mostly tourists.
Ah, okay. That changes everything.
It changes the entire logistical profile of the evacuation. Managing a local population is one thing. Locals understand the geography, right? If you tell them to take a certain road inland, they know where it is.
Plus, they speak the language and they're listening to local radio.
Exactly. But managing a transient population of tourists adds a massive layer of complexity. Greece relies heavily on tourism, but when you inject tourists into a rapidly deteriorating disaster zone, standard emergency infrastructure fails.
Yeah, a tourist in a beachfront Airbnb doesn't know the alternative inland routes. They don't know the geography.
They probably don't speak Greek well enough to understand a nuanced emergency broadcast either. And human instinct plays a role here too.
What do you mean?
When people face a fast-moving crisis in an unfamiliar place, they tend to seek out open, highly visible spaces. In a coastal town, that's the beach.
So you have these tourists who thought they were getting a relaxing Mediterranean holiday, and suddenly they're huddled on the sand under a black sky, waiting for the Coast Guard.
Yes. It's a logistical nightmare that pulls essential personnel away from actually fighting the fire, forcing them into complex, multilingual maritime extractions.
And this threat is expanding to iconic tourist islands, right? The Peloponnese Peninsula, Crete, Paros, Lesvos.
All of them are facing extreme fire risks right now.
But travel remains open, which makes sense for their economy. But the advice authorities are giving is grim. They're telling travelers they have to register their mobile phones for emergency evacuation alerts the second they arrive.
It really shifts the psychological baseline of a vacation, doesn't it? You're supposed to be leaving stress behind, but now your first step is opting into a national disaster broadcast system.
It's wild.
Right.
But, Greece isn't experiencing this in a vacuum. To really grasp this, we need to zoom out to the rest of the continent because this isn't an isolated meteorological freak event.
No, it's a symptom of a much larger overarching climate crisis.
Right. The entire continent of Europe is currently baking under this record-breaking heat wave. It's drying out all the vegetation and creating a continent-wide tinderbox.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's helpful to think of Europe right now as a massive kiln. Months of record-breaking heat have systematically baked the moisture out of the soil.
So by the time those 45-mile-per-hour winds hit, they're not just blowing over regular brush, they're blowing over pre-baked kindling.
Precisely. And this kiln effect is everywhere.
So what does this all mean for the rest of Europe? I mean, the geographic spread is astonishing. Italy has placed its major cities, Rome, Milan, Venice, Naples, under red alert for mid-30s Celsius temperatures.
And that's incredibly dangerous for those specific cities due to their infrastructure.
How so? Because of the old buildings?
Yes. Cities like Venice or Rome are dense and largely built of brick and stone. They absorb heat during the day and radiate it all night. And many of those older residential buildings don't have standard central air conditioning.
Oh, wow. So you can't even cool down when the sun sets?
No. So a sustained temperature in the mid-30s transitions very quickly into a slow-moving mass casualty event, especially for the older population.
And it goes far beyond southern Europe, too. One of the most shocking reports here is from the United Kingdom. There was a 371-acre wildfire in Suffolk.
A major wildfire in the UK is surprising in itself.
Right. But the really crazy detail is that it burned dangerously close to the Sizewell B nuclear power station.
Yes, that really highlights the vulnerability of our modern infrastructure.
But, how does a brush fire actually threaten a nuclear plant? Isn't the reactor core heavily fortified in concrete or something?
Oh, absolutely. The flames aren't going to breach the physical containment structure of the reactor. The danger is actually external.
Okay, what do you mean?
A nuclear power station needs a constant flow of electricity to run its massive cooling pumps. Those pumps circulate water to keep the reactor core and the spent fuel pool stable.
Wait, so the power plant relies on the external power grid to keep itself cool?
Partially, yes. If a massive wildfire sweeps through and destroys the transmission lines connecting the plant to the national grid, the station loses its off-site power.
Oh, I see.
Then it has to rely on its emergency backup diesel generators. And while those are highly redundant, running a nuclear facility on backup generators while a 371-acre wildfire rages outside is a massive, complex variable.
Yeah, that sounds like a situation where you don't want any variables at all.
Exactly. It needs to be a tightly controlled environment. Plus, if the fire blocks the roads, how do you get emergency personnel or replacement fuel for those generators in or out?
And the UK's fire services aren't really designed to fight massive wildfires, right? Historically, they have damp, mild summers.
Right. They are highly trained, but primarily for urban structural fires, not advancing 300-acre walls of flame in the wilderness.
It just shows how this extreme heat is forcing countries to fight disasters they aren't equipped for.
And the heat wave is a silent killer, acting as a massive force multiplier.
Yeah, the human toll of just the heat is staggering. We're looking at almost 400 heat-related deaths in Austria in June alone, thousands in Britain this year, significant spikes in France and Germany.
That heat weakens the population and exhausts the medical infrastructure before a single fire even starts.
But by the time the vegetation catches fire, the emergency responders are already operating at diminished capacity.
Exactly. You have a depleted medical network suddenly trying to manage complex kinetic disasters like evacuating 500 tourists by sea.
It really is pushing our emergency responders past the brink of what is safely manageable, which, brings us full circle back to
And the helicopter.
Yeah, that terrifying midair collision isn't just an aviation mishap. It's the focal point of this massive interconnected European crisis. You have historic heat, volatile winds, and an environment that is just overpowering the machinery.
It's an environment that no longer behaves the way it did even a decade ago.
Absolutely. And that leaves us with the final thought for you to mull over today. If traditional summer hotspots now require mandatory mobile emergency alerts and massive sea evacuations just to visit safely.
How might the global tourism industry have to permanently evolve?
Exactly. What does our fundamental cultural idea of the carefree summer getaway look like in the coming years? It's something to definitely keep in mind as you plan your next trip. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll keep looking closely at the sources to bring you the full picture. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, one question for you. Do you think the mid-air collision between the two firefighting helicopters could have been prevented with better coordination, advanced technology, or improved communication? Or are such tragic accidents sometimes unavoidable during dangerous wildlife missions? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.